Hi, and welcome to Malachi's Message YouTube channel, Toxic Mold Sucks Stories. I'm Elizabeth Kripe. I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of Malachi's Message. Co-hosting today is Emily Rochelle. She's the co-founder of Malachi's Message and also serves as our board chair. We want to give a quick shout out to Kurt Carpenter Law. He is one of our corporate sponsors, has done amazing work for us. He'll work with anybody in the greater Houston area if you need some assistance with legal help. Go check him out, kurtcarpenterlaw.com. Today, we have the unique and truly just an honor and a privilege. This is somebody that we fell in love with months ago and that we wanted to have on, Casey McCurry. She is, in our words, and we'll give you her official title, but we summed it up just like the definition of strength and a badass mom is what was said before, but her, I guess, official title, she is a intake director and client advocate for Justwell Law, and she also serves as the executive assistant for a civil engineering firm in North Carolina. Thank you so much, yes. Casey. We're so excited about this today.
Yes, I'm finally excited I got to come.
Thank you, Casey, seriously, for coming on and sharing your just your story. It's so impactful. And can you just start off with, first off, explaining how your life was before your family ever went into mold? Like, what was your life like?
It's hard. It's actually really hard to remember what it was like before. I don't know if it's like that for anybody else, but it's hard to remember the before because for us, we didn't know about it for quite a bit of time. And so we just always thought that we had like really bad luck. You know, our kids were always sick. We were always sick. And I thought that was normal, and we just had bad luck as a family. We had moved into the first house not long after my son was born. And so as a family of five, ever since we've been a family of five, it's been a struggle. Prior to that, I mean, it's really hard to remember because it's been such a long road. And so I don't really know. I know before I knew about mold that I thought it was something that was in my grandma's bathroom. I had no idea that it could make you sick. I mean, I was so naive. I had no idea at all.
When did your mold journey start? Like what year? Because I know we're in 2022, but what year? You've been on this journey for years.
Yes. So it actually started in 2012-ish. But we did not figure out what was going on until 2019. And that's kind of when everything came to light. So it's really crazy how long we went without knowing what was going on.
Wow. Can you then share your story? What happened to you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a military family, and we PCS'd in 2012, and we moved into our first house. And that's kind of when my son was just born, and the girls were really small, and we were just always sick. Like the whole time we were always sick, and we never figured out why. But for 4 years, it was something constant. I mean, just constant dental issues, neuro issues, constant upper respiratory issues, recurrent ear infections, pneumonia. And then my youngest son, he was preemie, but he was fine. 3-month checkup, 6-month checkup, all of those were fine. His neuromuscular, his tone, all of that was normal. And then all of a sudden, once he started crawling on the floor, he went back for his next checkup, and all of a sudden he was paralyzed on one side. And we were like, what happened? We don't understand. And so they just kind of said it's probably from his birth, that they just didn't really give me any answers. This is normal, it's normal. Sometimes, things like this happen to preemies. So we had a really rough 4 years in that house, and then we moved to North Carolina, and our health got better, like instantly. Like we were better, our health got better. Like it was different. So I was like, in my mind, I was thinking it's because the kids are older. They're not in daycare all the time. We're back with family. Like it's just different. And we were in North Carolina for about 2.5 years. And then we moved back to the same location, and we moved into another house, and instantly all the things started again. Seizures, nosebleeds, pneumonia, and then we saw visible mold. And so we moved out for a month while they remediated. And then when we moved back in, we got sicker. Coming to find out, there wasn't like proper containment. Things weren't done the right way. Certain things weren't replaced. And some things just weren't done at all. And at that point, everything that was going on was so similar to the first 4 years that I reached out to the tenant of that house. And then she sent me pictures and she was like, yeah, this was a big issue in that house after y'all left. Like, we found it when y'all left. So then it comes to find out that there was issues in the first house as well. And we didn't really figure it out until we moved into the second house. And it was in the same neighborhood. It was the same building defect. It was the same style house, built at the same time, all of that. And it was the same issue in both houses. And we never knew until we came back and went through it again. And that's when everything clicked, and it's just been crazy ever since.
So just to clarify, this was all military housing?
Yep, all military housing.
Okay. So when you said it clicked, what do you mean? Can you describe that? How did you go from like, we're super sick all the time, stuff is going on, to, oh, this is a mold issue?
So whenever we moved back and we started having the same issues that we had before, I thought that was kind of weird. I was like, what's going on? But then when we found the mold and we started to see the mold, I was like, wait a minute. And then I started researching it. I started looking at it and all of the things that it could cause. And then that's when I reached out to the old tenant, and I actually went back on that neighborhood page. I went back on that neighborhood page because I remembered when we lived in that first house, they had to come and remediate the bathroom floor because they said that it was discoloration or mildew or something like that. And I remember that they blocked off the door with some plastic, and me and Camden slept in the master bedroom that night. My husband was deployed and we slept in the master bedroom with like plastic up over the door. And I went back on Facebook because I had a picture of it, and I typed in my name on the group page, and sure enough, that picture from 4 years earlier surfaced. It was still there. And I was like, wait a minute. And so that's when I reached out to the tenant, and she sent me some pictures of the remediation that was done on that house after I left. And I was like, this is the same issue. This is the same issue. I now have proof. I have pictures of both. Our symptoms are all the same. Like, there's no way that our health deteriorates. We move, we get a little bit better, and then we move back and the same stuff starts happening. And then ever since then, it's just been, I mean, just more and more stuff has come to light over, I had a complete, full, total hysterectomy at 27 years old. They could never figure out why. So, all three kids had to have their tonsils adenoids, like all three of them. I had never had a cavity, and all of a sudden I had to have 4 root canals. My daughter, who had never had a cavity, had to have they call it a baby root canal. Camden had hearing loss. He had to have tubes because there was so much fluid in his ears, he couldn't hear. He's blind in one eye. It was just like crazy stuff that I never knew could be linked to mold. I had no idea. Like I said, I thought it was something that was in like your grandma's bathroom, in the shower that you cleaned every now and again. Like, I had no idea what all it could do. And I've learned so much over the past 3 years at this point that now it's such a big part of my life that there's not a day goes by I don't think about it. I walk in a store and I'm like looking up at the air vents. Like, I don't know why, but it's like a thing now. Go to a doctor's appointment and I'm like looking at the air vents. I don't know. It's just stuck now. It's definitely become the biggest part of my life other than my family.
Sorry, that's a lot. That's just a lot. How did your extended family and your friends, how did they react when you started to put together that mold was the issue and the root cause of this? Were they very supportive? Did they help you, or was it a new thing that they also had to kind of be educated on?
That none of them knew anything about it either. Like, they had no clue. It's definitely been something I've had to educate people on Some people are willing to learn about it and accept it, and other people just say okay and look at me like I'm crazy and move on about their day. They probably haven't thought about the conversation since. But that was kind of like family and current friends. I have met so many new people in this community that now some of my best friends are people that I've met through our situation, which is crazy. But there's people that I talk to every single day and I consider best friends, and I met them through this journey, which is crazy. So, and I know you were asking something a while ago, Emily, but I think it was muted, so I didn't hear what you were saying.
It was, I just realized I muted myself. So, I was asking if, because what you mentioned about your son Camden, how he was developing normally, he was perfectly fine, but then all of a sudden he regressed, and mainstream medical doctors unfortunately aren't educated on mold. And so a lot of times they, like to chime it up to, well, this is normal, or this just happens sometimes. Like there's not a reason when there's a reason for something to happen.
That I went back, and it was in 2020. I went back and got all of his medical records from his first 4 years of life. And I went through them page by page and I was looking at them. And that was the moment I noticed that all of his neuromuscular, his tone, everything that they check at all these wild child checks, it was normal, 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 normal. And then all of a sudden at 9 months, it was, abnormal, increased tone. And I was like, what changed between 6 months and 9 months? Oh, I know. He started crawling or attempting to crawl. He had to do the army crawl because he had no use of his right side. So it was almost like an army crawl. And where he crawled was on the floor. Where was the mold that we found out several years later? Underneath the floor.
Yep.
And it just kind of opened my eyes to everything.
And that's where all the mold spores and mycotoxins settle, when they are redistributed into the air, or if they're coming from different, areas in the home, they go on the floor. And that's why babies are so susceptible. I think that's why
pets too. We lost his service dog.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're right. That's where it settles. And that's why children and pets, that's where they are all the time, or on the floor. That's something I didn't know at all.
So tell us a little bit about your life today. I mean, you've been going through this for 10 years and fighting this, and you are one of the, I think I consider one of the biggest mold advocates and most knowledgeable people out there. And what it's like today.
It's crazy to think that it's been 10 years, but in all actuality, it's only been on my radar for 2.5 because we just didn't know. But I have found so much joy in helping other people. And I think it's because you help yourself heal when you start to help other people. And so by talking to people that are going through it now, having been through it myself, they are so happy that they get to talk with somebody that understands them. They're like, oh, you've been through it too. And I'm like, yes. You almost hear that sigh of relief, like, I'm going to be okay. Like you can hear it in their voice. They're like, okay, this isn't the end. Like somebody's on the other end of the phone and they're talking to me and they sound okay. I'm not okay. So health wise, there's stuff that will be around forever, stuff that won't go away. Stuff that has affected my kids, mostly Camden, that will never go away. And it's just infuriating that this is not common knowledge. Like it's really not. Nobody, unless you go look for it, you really don't see anything about it. And that's been the hardest thing, is to raise awareness. Because everybody just says, oh, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's outside. You bring it in when you come. Yes, but that's not what we're talking about here. And then when it comes to remediation and people not doing it properly, and then you end up getting sicker, people think because you're getting remediation done, everything's going to be fine and everything's going to be fixed. And that's not the case a lot of the time.
I think that's one of the biggest problems, because a lot of times when people have remediation and they go back in and they're still sick or they get worse, and then they go to a doctor who isn't knowledgeable on mold, then they really start to think, well, maybe I am just crazy, or maybe this is going to be the rest of my life. And they don't realize that, no, it just remediation wasn't done correctly and you're still being exposed, but actually a lot more, because they now have cross-contaminated everything.
Yeah. I mean, everything that we had to get rid of. I mean, you think in your head, yes, I have to get rid of my kitchen table. Yes, I have to get rid of my mattresses. But nobody talks about getting rid of your father's Bible. Like, he's no longer here. Like, that's something that you can't get back, or your keepsakes from your children that they've made. That's stuff that's irreplaceable. I don't care about the couches. I don't care about the mattresses, but there's certain things that really hit hard whenever you had to say goodbye to it. And a lot of people don't understand that either. Just because you have remediation done and you move out of that location, if you take your stuff with you, you're still going to be sick. I was not aware of that either at first. It took some ladies that had been through it before me to like take me by the hand and say, come on, we're going to walk you through this, and we're going to show you what you can keep and what you can't keep. We're going to show you what next steps you need to take. And if it wasn't for them, I have no clue what I would have done. And so it's my goal to be that for everybody else. And it's also my goal for military families not to have to deal with this. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. But I mean, we've been working on things for years now with Congress. And I mean, there's been some rule changes. I won't say improvements. There's been some rule changes, but no real improvements. I'm still getting messages every day from people on the base here that are, asking, hey, who do I go to for help with this or help with this? And you just kind of foresee their future, and it's awful because you know what they're about to go through.
You mentioned earlier, and you touched on it, so I'm sorry if I'm bringing up something that's pretty emotional, but a lot of women, unfortunately, that I've dealt with have had to also have a hysterectomy because they didn't know. And now they just stole your and your husband's ability to have any more children.
Yeah.
People don't realize there's no cost. There's
nothing you can do about that.
No.
And I figured that, I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't know if I would have had any more just because of the health issues that our children have currently, but the thought of not being able to, and that kind of being taken at such a young age. And I didn't understand why at all. And then to have to go on like hormone replacement therapy forever, your body just goes haywire. Like it's crazy to think that it could affect every body system that you have, but it literally does. I could name everything from my head to my toes of how it affects you. And people are just like, oh, it makes you cough. Oh, it makes you sneeze, or, no, like there's so much more to it. So much more. And when you tell people, like, look up that symptom that you're having and mold exposure, just Google that word and you'll be shocked. There's still things today that I will think about, and I'll say, let me see it. I'll go look and I'll be like, well, that makes sense now. It didn't at the time. I mean, but I was, in my early 20s, I was young, I was naive. It was my first time away from home. I didn't know that at all. So, it's definitely, eye-opening to be in your 20s and to be told that you're not ever going to have the opportunity to have any more kids ever.
Yeah, Elizabeth's doctor almost did a hysterectomy on her because of it too.
Yeah, I've even gone back to the results, like after they did the surgery and they sent everything to pathology. I even went back to try to find the results from that to look into it. Had I known then what I know now, I'd have been like, hey, can you test this tissue for that? And I didn't know, so of course they didn't. But I often wonder, did that play a major role in why I had to have it done? Because I mean, nobody else in my family did in their 20s. I mean, I don't think I know anybody in their 20s. You know, I'm sure there's plenty of people. I just didn't know of any.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor, but I will say, based off all the clients that I've dealt with, that is a huge thing for women to almost have a hysterectomy, or some of them, like you, they do. Their doctors, and like Elizabeth's doctor almost did one on her because they couldn't figure out why they were in so much pain, because they don't know. You can't expect them to know what they were never taught.
Yep, so. That's crazy. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, because that was like a few months. Then we found mold and we had to leave the state. And I found an OB that was like, oh, no, they're wrong. You don't need this. But had we not found mold when we did, I would have gone through with it. Because at that point, I was just done. I was in so much pain, couldn't function. But yeah.
And I didn't know. That was back before I found out everything. That's back before I found out everything. So I didn't know. So what happened to me, like, almost happened to you. Like, you were this close to it if you wouldn't have moved. So yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, we were like scheduling the date and everything. The doctor is now very well versed in mold because I had words with him, and he was Emily's OB actually. And he heard my name and was like, okay, right? Like, yeah, whatever you tell me, sure.
Oh yeah. The other frustrating part is finding a doctor that will listen to you. I mean, it's just super frustrating.
Yeah, but
that's been one of the hardest things for us.
It is so hard to find a doctor that understand or will even listen to you about it. So I was very thankful that Elizabeth did have words with my OB that ended up being my OB later, because he was I think he did educate himself, because he was just like, whatever you need, Emily, we'll do. I understand. I was like, thank you.
Yeah. I found out that I had lesions on my brain because I had woke up one day and it felt like I had a stroke. Like, one side of my face was drooping, and it still does droop a little bit. But one side of my face was drooping, and I was just feeling really awful. So they did like a CAT scan, they did MRI, and it came back and it did show some lesions. Well, the lesions weren't in the spot that they would be for MS. So that, they said, come back, we'll work you up. We'll do like an LP just to make sure. But then when we moved and I tried to see a new neurologist, and at that point I was aware of the mold, because I had the MRI before I knew about mold. So when I met my new neurologist, I took the disc in and I was like, hey, we lived in mold. And before I even got the word mold out of my mouth, he was like, no. And like completely shut me down, like didn't even listen to the rest of what I was saying. So I was like, okay, well, I'm finding a different neurologist. Like, he didn't even let me get the whole word out. Yeah. And I just, so, it's just, we're still looking for certain medical providers. We've still yet to find everybody we need.
I have so much respect for you though, Casey, because you have been like, not only for other people, but hearing you talk about your family, like, you are their gatekeeper. Like, you have just taken this by force to make sure your family is taken care of. That's incredibly admirable, because a lot of people don't do that.
So I look at it like, God gave me this family for a reason. Like he chose me. He chose this family for me. He chose me for this family. It is my duty to make sure that they're okay. It is my duty to advocate for them. And that is across, everything, not just housing, not just school or, medical stuff. It's everything. Like, if I don't do it, who else is going to?
Casey, you've done something which is, I think, amazing for your son, which is you got his medicine, his medication that he needs because he has seizures, to be put into the classroom. Can you kind of talk about that? Because I think that is something that parents need to understand, and that if they fight like you did, then they can potentially have, that should just be there anyways. But
right. So, in schools, medication is typically supposed to be in the nurse's office, locked up in a lockbox. For most medication, that is fine. There are certain medications that are considered emergency medications that kind of need to be given ASAP in an emergency. So he does have an emergency seizure medication. Some seizure medications you can wait 2 to 3 minutes or 3 to 5 minutes. With him, when he has a seizure, he immediately goes into respiratory distress. That's it. So he has to be given his ASAP, and they wanted it in the office, locked up in a lockbox. And I was like, nope, we're not doing that. And at the school in North Carolina, they had no issue with that. He kept it in a little backpack on his back. And it's super light. It's like a toddler backpack, and never had any issues with it. But then when we moved here, they were like, nope, we're not doing that. And I fought tooth and nail, and I quoted the IDEA Act and a couple of other things that say that he, even though he has this disability and he has these issues, he still is supposed to have an equal and easy access to education, like period. And by putting his medication in the office, that's not it. So we did go through, and it took some time and talking to a bunch of people, but we did get it to where he can have his backpack with his medication in the classroom. It does have a little lock on the bag, but his teacher has a key, the aide has a key, the nurse has a key, so they can access it really quick, but other students aren't able to. And so I've been trying to do some research on how I can get some lock bags or lock boxes for every classroom, so that other issues like this for other families that might not think to fight so hard for it, they're just not turned away. I have a really hard head and I don't like taking no for an answer. So I was like, no, we're not doing it. But other families might just be like, oh, okay, that's the rule. Okay, I guess so. And then it could result in something awful. So that's something that I've worked really hard on. That's like, I look at mold as being like something I work with every day, but like special education needs, ADA stuff like that is right up there with it, because I do so much of it all the time. I think I sent you some emails not long ago, Emily, and I was like, hey, do this. They're supposed to have this, this, and this. And I just think it's important, and there's not enough awareness of that either. So it's definitely, I feel like I'm fighting the world some days. So, but keeps it interesting, I guess.
Yes, you did send me a lot of really good information, because unfortunately my son has issues whenever he's exposed to mold again. So, which made me have to pull him from school. But anyways,
I don't know about you guys, but like, especially with my younger ones, like when we moved into this neighborhood, they were still doing construction, and mold has such a big place in our life at this point that they were building a house. So it had like the plastic and all the construction on it. We pass it by and my son goes, what's wrong with that house? Does it have mold? And I was like, no, they're just building it. But because it was under construction and had plastic everywhere, he thought automatically it had mold. Do your kids ever like look at something and like, is that mold?
My son, because he is so neurologically messed up, he honestly to this day does not know that he
really,
because he wasn't there. He literally, so I'm waiting for him to get a little bit older before I tell him about what he went through.
Right. Yeah, I don't know that mine truly understand it all, but they definitely have heard the word so much, and they've seen me talk about it, and they've seen videos that they do every once in a while, they'll come up with something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like in my mind, I'm like, this has ruined my kids. But if anything, I hope it just made them super aware of their surroundings, so maybe they don't go through the same things that we did, because I didn't know about it growing up. Maybe if I had, I would have known what to look for.
My son knows that he gets sick when he's exposed to mold, and so that's why we had to take him out of school. And unfortunately, because of his challenges and differences, he was bullied severely a lot. So he has a lot of anxiety and PTSD just from that alone. And I think, your son too has obviously gone through that too.
For sure. Yeah, it does, because you think, they already have so much that they're going through. Let's just add something else onto it. Why not? And that's just awful. Like, they already fight so hard. Why continue to make things rough on them? Like, it's really hard some days to think about that. And it's really hard to think some days that if it wasn't for mold, like, this life could be completely different for him. Completely different. But, he doesn't know any different. He is normal to him. even though at this point with his age now, he's starting to figure out that something's not quite right. And that's been really tough to navigate too. So there's a lot of times where I see parents, their kids are diagnosed with autism or regression, and like immediately my thought goes to, did your house have mold? And like it shouldn't be that way. But that is my first thought. And I hate it. It should not be that way, but it has literally taken over my entire brain at this point.
Where is Canton at today? Because isn't he starting to kind of walk?
He is. So yesterday was the first day that he had walked all the way from the parking deck at the hospital to the hospital by himself without his wheelchair. Yesterday was the first day.
Oh my God. That's amazing.
Yes, yesterday was the first day. So I was so excited. Of course, we bought Xbox characters and a big Yoshi beanbag chair and spent like so much money, but we were just like so excited for like Christmas though. But he's been working really hard. I've questioned things over the last couple months, like because he had surgery back right before Thanksgiving, and it was supposed to improve his quality of life and pain on his right side. But I've questioned myself often because he got a really bad wound infection. He had a couple of setbacks, and it's just been really awful. But yesterday I was like, oh my gosh. So yesterday was the first time in like almost 6 months that he was able to do that.
That's amazing. He is such an inspiration. He truly is.
He is awesome. He's so funny. He's here. He's in the living room. I can hear him playing this game now.
I love it. Well, what is one thing, if you could leave people with one thing, a little glimpse of what you think people should understand about mold, what would that be after your experience?
I would say that it can literally affect every aspect of your life. It can affect your marriage. It can affect your mental health, your mental well-being. Everything. I don't think people really understand that when things, all of a sudden go really bad, like there's no explanation for what's going on. Just call someone to come and do a test or check it out, because just for peace of mind, if nothing else. But there's been many days where I have just felt like I'm going to give up. Like there's nothing else I can do. This is the way that life is going to be. I should just sit down and take it. And if I would have done that, then I wouldn't be here. And I have zero clue where my family would be either. And I would just say, keep pushing and looking for stuff, because it can affect so many things. I can't even list them all, but I'm telling you, from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet, I can tell you how mold affects every part of your body. It's ridiculous. I had no idea. So, and find the right medical. Don't take no for an answer. Just like the neurologist that wouldn't let me get it, I have not been back. Just don't settle. Your health is so much more than that. Your family is so much more than that.
Thank you so much. That I'm just sitting, remembering half the stuff you said and processing, because we're going to have to go back through this. This is amazing.
I know, I said a lot.
You are. You're seriously.
Edit it half out. I talk a lot.
No. No, but people need to hear it because you're real. You're not just giving like platitude answers. So we appreciate that. We're very real here. So we appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is what many nights of insomnia come from, is just laying there thinking how you would change stuff if you could.
I'm only laughing because I think Emily and I texted the other night and I was like, hey, I beat you. I got 4 hours of sleep. You only got 2. Or she was texting me that. So we get that entirely.
Yeah. That's another thing. That is one of the biggest symptoms that I see talking to people, is the insomnia. And that for me has not gone away. Even though we have been out of mold for 2 years last week, I still can't sleep. But that's fine, because I'm really busy. So it just gives me a lot of time to fight people and stuff. Like, medication for school, or, moldy military housing, or whatever the case is, just gives me more time to do that, I guess.
I was saying I would never want to be on your bad side, Casey, because I mean, just knowing that you're up all night long thinking about everything and researching, I'm like, yeah.
I've had several people say that, like, you scare me a little bit. My husband has told me I will never divorce you before. Like, he was like, there'd be no way. So luckily we like each other. So, but no, I am just a mom from a small southern town that her life was turned upside down by mold. And I just want other people to understand that and to know that they're not alone. And it doesn't have to be someone that is explaining things in this, way that you don't understand, or using these huge words. And I mean, it just sucks. I mean, it makes you sick and it sucks. There's no other way to put it.
Well, thank you so much, Casey, for sharing everything in your story. And we're going to have you back on, because there's so much more stuff I think that we need to go over with your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'd be more than happy to.